Thank you for tuning into this video. My name is Marcelo Accusi and I'm the Manager of Strategic Planning here at North Sydney Council.
Hi, my name's Jonathan Bush. I'm a transport planner at a company called SCT Consulting and we work in North Sydney.
Before we begin the video, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land upon which we sit, the Camaragal people of the Eora Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and may we care for this land as they have before us. Council is proposing some changes to its development control plan to reduce car parking requirements for new development in places with good access to public transport. We know that parking can sometimes be a sensitive issue, so we've decided to make this video to help unpack a few things. We'll talk about what's being proposed, answer some common questions, and explain why we think this is important for the North Sydney community. Like the rest of Sydney, North Sydney is growing. We're seeing growth in job opportunities, retail, dining, and more people are choosing to live here. On top of this, we're getting 2 new metro stations. While this brings a range of benefits, it also means that we have to be thoughtful in how we respond to these changes. One of the areas we need to have a careful think about is the way we travel to and around North Sydney. Sydney has traditionally been very dependent on cars to get around, but there is an increasing awareness that reliance on cars is unsustainable for our growing city. Unrestricted car growth impacts not only our environment, but it increases congestion with its time and well-being impacts. It fundamentally affects the shape, character and livability of our city. See how car dependence has shaped Sydney as a whole. This is a dramatic example when North Sydney was divided in 1968 to make way for the Warringah Freeway. It also undermines the effectiveness of metro and other public transport in the area. One of the strongest influences of car use is how much parking we build. Research shows that the more parking we provide, the more cars we'll see on the road, even if there are good alternatives in public transport. So if we want to see a future that is sustainable and not dependent on car use, we need to guide the amount of parking we're building with our development. Finding the right balance for parking is not something we'll solve in one go. On-street time limits, off-street parking for new development, and parking stations and the resident parking scheme are all important components of the parking equation. And this is something that we're working on right now. We're preparing a holistic strategy to manage all forms of parking, but this will take time and consultation. And whilst this work is ongoing, there is a need right now to address the large amount of high density development that is currently being proposed. There is a great opportunity of encouraging a reduction in car trips generated by those who move into these new developments and who live in close proximity to existing and upcoming rail lines. So what are we proposing to change in the Development Control Plan, or the DCP as it's often referred to? Before we dive into that, let me briefly explain what the DCP is. The DCP contains detailed controls and considerations that all new development must consider in assessing a development application. This also includes parking rates for new development. But not everyone in North Sydney has the same access to public transport, and so these changes would not apply throughout all of North Sydney, just the areas shown on this map. An interactive map is available on our website to view at your leisure. These areas are well serviced by public transport, especially by trains. Jonathan will talk about this a little more in a few moments. Our proposal is that parking rates are reduced where public transport is highly accessible. You can see in this table the existing parking rates compared to the proposed parking rates in these highly accessible locations. It should be noted that even more restrictive rates of parking have been in operation in St Leonard's since 2015. I'll now hand over to Jonathan, who will take you through the rest of the presentation.
This map explains how we've arrived at the parking rates. It illustrates areas of high, medium and low public transport accessibility. The arrival of Sydney Metro in 2024 will increase accessibility even further. These are some of the most accessible areas in Sydney from a public transport perspective. As I'll come to in a moment, these are areas where a very significant number of households are already embracing car-free lifestyles. So what do we expect will be some of the outcomes of this policy? We expect that it will limit the growth in cars on the road. We expect it will result in a reduction in future carbon emissions by about 3,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide per annum by 2036. We expect that it will improve housing choice by providing more options, more car-free apartments, which will improve housing affordability. We expect it will support less car-dominated street environments with smaller scale intersections and driveways and less traffic. We expect that it will enable a greater policy focus on pedestrian and cycling planning and infrastructure. Reducing parking provision is not something that's new. Many cities have gone down this path before we have. And from that, we know there's usually some unease or uncertainty for what this might mean to your daily life. You might, on the one hand, understand why reducing parking rates sounds like a good idea, but at the same time, you can think of some reasons why everybody should still have their own car. So what we'll do next is go over some of the common issues that are raised in opposition of reducing car parking rates. The first issue we might experience is people need cars. In highly accessible areas, did you know that car ownership is actually declining? There are already 6,200 car-free households in the North Sydney local government area, and the average household in the council area already has less than one car per family. In the suburbs shown on the slide, more than a quarter of all households don't own a car. In the suburb of North Sydney, this figure is almost 30%. The data behind this graph is actually for all dwellings, including houses. So when we think about just apartments, the figure could be even higher. Another common issue raised is that there's never enough parking. Did you know the app called Parkhound highlights that on any given day there is an abundance of parking available in North Sydney? Parking is available in all of the locations where there's a white dot on the screen and is currently available for rent. Another question you may have is, where will visitors or trades park when visiting your apartment? There are a number of parking stations around North Sydney local government area and around the areas that are proposed for change. These generally have plenty of capacity after hours for visitors and other occasional car-based needs. We also want to mention that there are existing loading dock provisions for each apartment that will remain unchanged by this policy proposal. So tradies and others may continue to access basements on an occasional needs basis. Another common issue raised is occasional use of cars, needing to use a car to once a fortnight to visit someone or go to a sports game, etc. North Sydney has an abundance of alternative options to the car, including public transport and walking and cycling. There are also car share options, including GoGet. For instance, on the screen, you can see all of the GoGet pod locations, with both orange and grey showing where cars are available to be rented. Another concern community members might have is that future apartments with no car parking may not sell or lease. Did you know that in St Leonard's, tighter parking restrictions have operated since 2015? Apartments are being rented and sold with no parking. They're also cheaper and therefore improve housing choice and housing affordability. I'll now hand back to Marcelo.
This slide shows the various examples that are currently being proposed within the areas that we've been talking about. No doubt more proposals will occur over time, particularly on the back of the state government's 2036 plan for St Leonard's and Crow's Nest, as well as the periphery of the North Sydney CBD and Milsons Point. So in summary, and just to reiterate, this policy position will only apply to new development in the areas that we've identified in this video. The proposed parking rates seek to take advantage of increased public transport accessibility in key locations. New developments in these areas will still have a level of parking that will provide choice for those that want parking and those that don't need it. A significant number of households are already living car-free lifestyles in these highly connected areas. We think that the proposed changes are a significant step towards greater levels of transport sustainability. Thank you for joining us for this video today. So the public exhibition is open until the 13th of December 2022. The web address identified on this slide contains more detailed information, and we do look forward to hearing from you. Thank you and goodbye.